Well, welcome to State of Mind Talks, the podcast series from State of Mind Sport. This is a series exploring transition, the complex emotional and mental backdrop to confronting and going through major change. I'm George Riley, and each episode I chat to a familiar name from the world of sport. And this week's guest is one of the biggest names in world rugby, an all-conquering Wigan legend, an England international now finding some of his very best form in the twilight of his career, perhaps in the south of France. Sam Tomkins, great to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well.
And I'm loving the setup, first of all. Talk me through where you are.
I built a little pub in my garden through lockdown with an English builder who's my mate now over here, Paul Jenkins. Said we've got a few weeks off training. Why don't we knock something up in the garden? So we built a little pub. So yeah, that was it's bedtime for the kids inside. So I thought I'd better come out here.
Any excuse to get outside.
True.
There's so much I want to talk with you about transition, both in and out of rugby, and as your career, through your career, and how you've changed as a person. In terms of where we are at the moment, though, dealing with what we are and how it's been in France, where you are, what's your take been on how unsettling the last year has been for everybody?
It's just been, I think it's been bizarre for everybody. It only seems 2 minutes ago when people started talking about this coronavirus and it was, we could be going in lockdown, which was sort of seen as a joke at first, wasn't it? That you could be kept in your house because of a virus. It seems to have flown by. For me, being in France, there was obviously a big difference for us. My family in 2019, we had lots of family coming over to visit, and we had our third child, my daughter, in late 2019, and then we had nobody could come for last year. So it was, for us, it was strange, and me and my wife made a decision straight away that we want to make the most of this. And since I've been 16, I've been involved in rugby league seasons, and it's you never get the chance in the middle of summer to spend any time with anyone, really. It's your toughest part of the season. Sort of from Easter onwards, you're full into it. So last year I said, look, I've not even finished playing yet, and we get a summer at home. So I tried to make the most of it as a family over here. Although we're away from extended family, between me and my wife and my kids, we actually had a really good time.
So you immediately found the positive in a negative situation, but I guess circumstance helps a bit because you've got quite a nice place there. I know some of your teammates were probably living in flats and stuff, and found it a little bit harder being locked up.
Yeah, 100%. I know we're very, very lucky we are to have some outdoor space, and some of the lads who live away from family, living on their own, down in the south of France with a family 2-3 hours away, and only young kids who, like you said, no outdoor space, and you sort of had to be around the stadium because you had to train on your own, but you had to be close enough for medical care and things like that. So it was difficult, and obviously people do it a lot tougher than we had to do, but we were lucky that we could make the most of it.
This series has focused on the complex emotional backdrop, I guess, to transition in life and pro sport. So let's jump back to the start and your transition into rugby league. How did you find rugby in your early life, or was it something that found you?
I was living in Chorley at the time, not too far from Wigan. My dad was a police officer, and from a young age he joined the force at 18, and he sort of had to go wherever he was told, to move up the ladder to eventually become a sergeant. So my brother Joel was born in Warrington, and that's where my parents are both from. All my family live in Warrington. They moved down to Milton Keynes. That's where I was born. Not many players have come from Milton Keynes, I don't think.
No, not the hotbed.
And then, no, not really. And then moved to Chorley, where my dad got an opportunity to again move up the policing ladder, and that's where Logan was born, and that's where we settled. And I'd have been about 6. Joel would have been about 8. And Joel went down to the local team, Chorley Panthers. As kids, me and Joel had been taken to Wilderspool every home game to watch Warrington. We were big Warrington fans. My dad took us, my dad and went with his uncle and his mates, and that was us every weekend. So for as long as I can remember, it was on a weekend. It was going to Warrington, watching the game, and then as we started playing, it was the most normal thing ever to be playing rugby on a weekend, because we've been watching it all the time.
So it was just something you did, and I guess the family helped, and having the two brothers as well as your dad doing it helped. Some people highlight and chase a dream. Others, I guess, just fall by accident into a career. Which one were you?
Fallen into it 100%. My dad's never played a game of rugby in his life. He was just a guy from Warrington that liked Warrington Wolves. That was it. There was never any driving ambition that he wanted rugby player kids. It just happened that when we started playing it, we were all right at it. You know, we were pretty good as kids, and then that obviously ignited something in us. And then it was my parents then decided to move to Wigan to facilitate us playing rugby. You know, at a young age, they were driving us to Wigan, which was, you know, 20 minute drive there, 20 minute back, but in different places with three of us. So they just said, "Oh, well, we've nothing to stay in Chorley for," so they just moved, and yeah, you could say it's paid off in the end. But that's when it never, strangely, as a kid, when someone says, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up, it was like, oh no, I'm just going to be a rugby player. And you know, you have that blinding, well, that's just what I'm going to be. It was never questioned until I was about 13. I was like, all right, so you can't just choose. You've actually got to go through some selections to get into that. So for as long as I can remember, that's all I said. I just want to be a rugby player. There was never any fireman, nothing. And it was straight answer every single time. No, I'm just going to be a rugby player, and that was it.
Well, that single-minded, positive mindset, even as a kid who didn't really understand how it worked, that probably set the foundation for you, because there wouldn't have been any self-doubt, because you've already told yourself that's just what you're going to do.
I just thought you could pick what you want to do, and that's what I'd picked at 6. That was it. That was going to be the case. You know. Fast forward 10 years to when I was 16, it was the harsh reality kicked in that it's not quite as simple as that. But my desire for it then was, you know, what was gone from my blinding confidence that that's what I'll be, and then sort of changed into, you know, a real determination that, no, you know what, I am going to do it. So
yeah, there must have. I was going to say there must have been that split blow. This is the first and only time I'm ever going to compare my own sporting prowess to yours. But when I was trying to make it as a young footballer at Leeds, and I got to the age of 15, and I realised that I'm not going to make it, I didn't have that kind of drive and determination that you've just outlined to say, actually, no, I am. I just thought, actually, I don't want it enough to do what I have to do to even have a chance. But you had that little moment where you thought, no, I've got a chance here now, so I better make the most of it.
Mine actually, I can narrow mine down to one game. Weirdly, was so my first year of academy. Sean Wayne was the coach, and he wouldn't pick me. I was only 16. I was playing under 18s, and me at 16 looked like a 13-year-old, and some 18-year-olds and then. So I was way out of my depth, and Sean Wayne wouldn't pick me, and I was playing for nothing. You know, I wasn't one of the paid academy players. I was just, you come along and play. If you get picked and we win, you get 25 quid. That was it. I wasn't contracted or anything. And Sean just wouldn't pick me all year because I wasn't up to it. And I'd go and ask him every week, why am I not playing? He'd rattle off all these reasons. I'd go, yeah, I fully understand. I get it. I wouldn't pick me really, but I need to ask the question. And then the semi-final before the grand final, we played against Widnes. I wasn't playing. I was carrying water. And a fight kicked off, huge fight, brawl. We had 8 people banned for the final, which meant, unluckily for Sean, he had to pick me. I was in. And we played a game against Leeds at Headingley. So, you know, I'd only been 16. Place. My favourite place, yeah. Still love going back there. Didn't get as many boos when I was 16. And I played in this final. We won, and I actually played well. And I thought for that year leading up to it, it was when other kids were getting paid, and I'd sort of then realised, you know, probably not going to get this. It's probably not going to be. But I didn't. That wasn't through lack of effort or lack of determination. It was just through not getting picked for long enough. You get the hint. But I played in this game. we won and I played all right. And I thought, you know what, I reckon I can here. And I think had that game not happened and had I not been picked in that final, I think, you know, after that I could have made different decisions. And you know, I'm thankful for the fight in the semi-final, because without that, I wouldn't have got that opportunity. And yeah, I got then I stayed at Wigan again on no money. I could have gone somewhere else, but I had some real good advice from my parents at that point, and that sort of, I think that then sort of created the path that I've been on.
What was that advice?
Well, I hadn't been getting picked or paid, and after my first season, a couple of teams came in, Widnes and Salford, and they were like, "Look, you can come to us. We'll give you." I can't remember the figures. It's like £4,000 or £5,000. You know, £500 for signing, and when you're 16, 17, it's like, well, I can buy my car, I can learn to drive and things like that. And so I went to both of them clubs, Widnes and Salford, and sat there and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do that. By this point, because Joel was playing first team at 17 at Wigan, so I was, you know, Joel was leaps and bounds ahead of me at my age. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And my parents were like, but do you want to go and play for Widnes? Do you want to play for Salford? So I've been through the academy system at Wigan since I was 12, and all I'd ever wanted to do was play for Wigan. Although I was a Warrington fan as a kid, once I was in the Wigan system, it was almost like to complete the Wigan system was to play first team, and you get told that as a scholarship player at Wigan, like there's a clear path. If you're a good scholarship player, you'll get re-signed. If you're a good scholarship player at 15, you'll go to the academy. Academy kids go to first team. So it was almost like, although I was a Warrington fan, I didn't want to play for Warrington. I wanted to play for Wigan because that's where I was. And yeah, my parents were like, do you want to play for Salford and Wigan? I was like, no, but it's a few grand. And they just said, look, just stay at Wigan. And Wigan had said, look, if you want to go somewhere else, you can. But if you want to stay, you can. Like, we're not too fussed. And my parents said, look, we'll find a way of getting you a car. And I did that. You know, my parents didn't have a lot of money, but it was like, we'll find a way. And find my grandma at the time loaned me some money to get a scooter so I could get about. And I stayed. And then maybe 6-8 games into that season where I wasn't getting paid, I just played really well. I think of the confidence of this final we spoke about the year before, it just sort of give me a boost. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this. And then I got a contract. I was playing first team 12 months later.
So yeah, you were in the perfect place to forge a pathway and have your transition into professional sport. Leon Pryce, on his episode of the State of Mind Talks podcast, spoke very movingly about the environment that when he was a teenager, like you, when he made his debut, the environment that he went into. I mean, rugby league is a very macho environment anyway, I guess, making your way as a young kid in a team, but certainly in that era, even more so. And he said he had to mask his mental health really in order to show no sign of weakness. Otherwise, he thought he wouldn't get his chance. What do you remember of the culture and the environment that you walked into in that Wigan dressing room when you were that teenager you described as looking like a 13-year-old? Yeah,
it was tough. You get a thick skin pretty quickly, which has been handy for me over the years. But it's something that's completely new to everybody. But I felt like I already had an in because I'd seen Joel doing it. So Joel would come home from his academy training sessions. He'd be, you know, I don't know, he'd have a black eye, or he'd be like, oh, I've been being sick. I've been on the rowing machine that long. It's made me sick. And like for the normal 16-year-old, like you're a kid. No kid puts himself through that. But you know, I'd seen Joel was in an environment where that was the norm, and to get the absolute maximum out of yourself, you had to do it. So I feel like when I went into the academy, I probably had a little bit of a heads up of what was to come. But yeah, it's tough. And when I look back, I think, yeah, you do go through some times where you're with lads that are a lot older than you, that have been there, and it's pretty daunting. And for me, all my friends were that I'd played at Wigan St. Pat's with, they're still my friends today. Those guys were going to work, and I was still working. I was an apprentice greenkeeper when I left school while I was in the academy. That was what I wanted to do, and I was doing that, and then my friends would be apprentice plumbers, electricians, whatever it'd be. And then at a night, they'd just go out, and on a Friday, we'd catch up and, well, what have you been up to? And I'd tell them, and they'd be like, that can't be right. I'm like, yeah, we'd run up hills in Hayall until we're sick, or you're wrestling each other, and you do, and for a normal person, it is strange. And now I think, I look at my son, my eldest son Rex, I think, I'm not putting him in that. Like at 16, you're still a kid, aren't you? But it's only when you think back, but it was just the norm, and that's what you do, and that then sort of creates the sort of the mental resilience that you're going to need.
When you reflect, I can sense that you are reflecting a lot. I guess these chats kind of help bring through a lot of the great memories you've had of winning Challenge Cups and grand finals, as you did with Wigan. Fantastic career. Was there ever a part of that journey with Wigan when you did stop and think, I've made it? Or were you still striving with that determination all the way through to now? Did you ever kind of stop and think, I've made it here, this is me, I'm living the dream?
Never once. I think the environment is so tough and demanding, and it doesn't matter where you've got to, you're getting pushed. I genuinely never had that thought for as long as I was at Wigan. And we'd win trophies, and I've said this before to people, when I've won trophies, it's relief that I feel. Relief that everything that you've done was actually worth it. And it's not like I'm the worst loser. So when I win, I'm just happy that no one else has won. So if I win a grand final, I'm just happy that Warrington or Saints or Leeds haven't won it. It's not really. It's a strange feeling. It's pretty tough to describe. But that's mine's a relief, that because I know that every team trains hard. Every team has a group of players that do everything they possibly can, or the majority of players that will do everything they possibly can to win. And when you lift a trophy, I remember lifting the first trophy in 2010, and we'd had the horrendous pre-season. Michael Maguire just ripped us to pieces. And when I lifted the trophy at the end of the year, it was like, oh, right, finally, that makes sense now. So all that we've just been through, this is what it's for, and that's what it is. I've got a strange thing even when I win a game, I win games. I'm just so glad they didn't win that, because we tried really hard. Sometimes you lose games, you think, the much better team, but the tough games and finals and semi-finals, it's relief after the game that I feel, rather than anything else.
How much have you changed as a player from the teenager making his debut to the 32-and-a-half-year-old that I'm talking to now?
I probably had 3 stages of when I first came in. It was, you don't really care what you don't really have any. You don't have much pressure on you. Obviously, I had pressure from playing in the academy well, or starting my first team career well, but there's no real pressure because the senior players above you, the pressure when I was playing, the pressure was on Thomas Leuluai and Sean O'Loughlin. It wasn't on a 19, 20-year-old kid playing halfback. It wasn't. When I made my England debut, me and Kyle Eastman were 6 and 7. We were only 20. It was when I was in England camp a couple of weeks ago before the Exiles game. I was speaking to someone, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Joe Westerman, because he was around England at that time. I was like, yeah, we were 20, 6 and 7, we're 20 years old. And I wouldn't be that confident with a 6 and 7 of 20 years old now going into a World Cup, but it wasn't, because I think the pressure then was on Adrian Morley, Jamie Peacock, people like that were older than us. So the first stage of my career was just not really caring that much, because I didn't feel any pressure. And then the sort of mid stage of my career, from sort of 24, sort of moving 2013, we won the double at Wigan, then moving to New Zealand, and I then became a player that was seen as a senior player that had played well. And I feel that's when the pressure's on you. That's when the pressure's on you to sort of play well and lead a team. Whereas I think the third stage, which is what I'm in now, is I feel like I understand the game obviously a lot better than I ever have, and I'm completely comfortable being a leader, completely comfortable making decisions, and I'm comfortable telling people, this is what's best for us, or lifting someone up, or ripping into somebody if I need to. it's only in the last few years, probably like the last year at Wigan and the time that I've had at Catalan, I feel like I've sort of matured into what I'd see as somebody that's completely confident in their own sort of leadership combined with playing ability.
I guess the comparison I'm making in my own head right now is, the guy a couple of weeks ago when young Will Pryce came on for his debut, Leon's lad, and you trotted over at Huddersfield and wished him well and gave him a handshake while the match was going on, which was a really nice touch. And I'm comparing that to the niggly teenage Sam Tomkins, who was winding everybody up on the pitch and winding every fan up in the opposition terraces. They seem to me like two completely different people.
Yeah, well, they're not the same person, but I compete for everything, and if niggling becomes a part of that, or I've overstepped the line before, and sticking the fingers up at Leeds fans, that's it's not something I'm proud of now, but as a young kid, I was just caught up in the heat of the moment, and it's a lot of it's pantomime villain. I can do things and get booed for nothing, which I accept. So I think, well, if I'm getting it, I'm giving it back as well. You know what I mean?
Got booed. That Leeds flicking the V's, which I obviously remember as a Leeds boy, but and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't later that year when you played for England at Leeds, didn't you get booed by effectively your own fans who were England fans?
It was actually I got booed first.
Oh, you got booed first, right? So I do remember that wrong. Okay.
So it was your fault first. So you got the fingers because you booed me. I think
I wasn't there booing.
That's how. I think that's how it is in my head. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
That was a strange one. Playing at Leeds, running out, and I ran out with Jamie Peacock and James Graham. Ran towards the south stand, warming up, and it was like a resounding boo.
Right.
And I was like, that's strange. Didn't think anything of it.
Must be for someone else.
Yeah, genuinely. I thought Jamie Peacock was leaving Leeds or something. And then I started catching balls in kickers were kicking and backs were catching. Every time I caught it, got booed, and it became a thing. And then that first game, it took me by surprise. And Jamie Peacock said to me after the game, that's it's bullshit. That it shouldn't happen. And I was like, I'm not too bothered. I was bothered at the time, but for that one game, because then after that, it was like, yeah, of course they're going to boo because they booed last week, and that became a thing. And been getting booed since. I'd be lying if I said that it affected me. Genuinely, hand on heart, it doesn't. I've been booed on big stages, but I think I was always at Wigan in a successful team where the Wigan fans, made up for that. I was getting booed off opposition fans, but the Wigan fans loved me, and I wasn't playing to impress any other fans. I was playing to impress my mates, played to be in a successful team, and on the back of that, the Wigan fans are all over you.
So that's never kind of crept into your real life and given you kind of, I don't know, self-doubt, anger, whatever, the fact that people are hating me on something that I'm not. I mean, I chatted to Leon about this at length, and to Lee Breers actually in his episode. Because I get a bit caught up myself. Some people have a perception of me which is just way off the person I am, like way off. And it does bother me, the fact that, like, if people don't know, people don't have a clue who I am and know anything about me. I guess it's different when you're on the national stage doing what you do. But
so why would you care what somebody thought of you that you don't know?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I generally don't, but it's when people come to conclusions that I know are wrong. It's like, well, how can you think that? Or how can you? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I just think it's someone I don't know can make a judgment on me as a person from watching me for an hour and a half playing a game. That's a real strange way of judging someone's character as a person. I mean, I would never watch a sport, or never, if I had a snippet into, I could see you for 1.5 hours every week, unless you were doing something really extreme in that 1.5 hours, I'd never make a judgment on you as a person. And I think, I've always thought, I'm just not that bothered about it. And obviously social media now plays a huge impact, because social media then gives everyone a platform. If it's written down and they've got a Twitter handle, somehow it holds a little bit more weight. I've had the worst possible things said to me online, but I think no one's ever said that in the street. So they either don't believe it, or they've never bumped into me in the street. And I've seen a lot of people, no one's ever said it. And I think, yeah, it's never. But the only thing that has bothered me, things have been said around my parents at games that's upset my parents, and I've thought, yeah, you know what, it's wrong. But I said to my mum, like, it's not real life. Like me playing rugby and someone saying, "Oh, he's such a thing, he's horrible," is it? That's not real life. They've just seen me playing a game. You don't watch Coronation Street and start kicking off with the actors when you see them in the road, do you? Like, that's not how it is. It's not real life.
Some people do.
Don't get caught up in it. Yeah, but those people, that's the kind of people. Like, are you bothered? So like things have got said. And I know it's upset my mum in crowds. People have said, "Oh, I hope he does this," and like sort of wish real bad injuries on me. And my mum's like struggled with that a little bit, and that's the only bit that bothers me, you know. And I'm glad that my kids are of an age where they'll never go to a rugby game where they'll sort of experience any of that.
In terms of transition and your journey, both as a player, but also geographically, I guess, because Anthony Mullally's episode, he was discussing the bond between attachment and fear, and why we're more likely to stick with something, you know that we find is comfortable, rather than embrace the unknown. And you've done the latter, because you have taken the lead. I'm speaking to you now. You're not far away, but you're in a different country with your family, and you've also spent a couple of years basically on your own when you went to the NRL on the other side of the world. So is that part of your mindset, that you are, you're happy to attack that transition in you and see the change and see it as an opportunity for discovery and self-discovery?
Yeah, it's for me, I've always just thought I'd go and do something else at some point. When I got into the first team at Wigan and I was playing, I was really happy. 2009, 10, 11. And then we'd won a Challenge Cup in 2011. And I sort of had this feeling of like, let's go and do something else. And I've never been one of these people that's idolised the NRL and wanted to go and test myself against the best, like the most cliche line that comes out of rugby league players' mouths. That was never me. I'd never even thought about it. And I actually had a real in-depth meetings with Saracens Rugby Union to move there in 2011. During the meetings, it came out about Joel could potentially go, and then the transfer fees were so different. They just said, "Well, we'll just take Joel." So I'd have gone there. That could have been as easily my path. And it was all set to go. And Ian Lenigan just said, "Look, we're going to let Joel go, but you're basically the buyout clause was 750 grand." And Saracens said, "Well, we'll take Joel," because Joel's was less than that. And then Ian Lenigan said, "Look, we'll give you a new contract." So went in and I've always had a good relationship with Ian, and he said, "Look, I know you could have gone somewhere else, but we'll give you a good deal." Did that. And as soon as I'd signed it, I was like, but that thing I was looking for about going to rugby union was a change. And now I've just signed a 5-year deal doing the same thing I've just been doing. I was like, that was a poor choice. So after 12 months into a new 5-year deal, I had to go and knock on his door and say that I wanted to leave, which went down, as you'd imagine, lead balloon. And I just wanted to do something different.
Did you reconcile that yourself as, I've made a mistake, I shouldn't have just stuck with what I know, I need to do something different here, I shouldn't have done that?
Yeah. Money was a factor as well. I was really well paid, and I'd doubled my salary. I was on decent money, I doubled it, and that was the blinding factor for me. But then I realised I could learn that doing something else as well. I'm just going to be doing the same thing. And it wasn't that I disliked Wigan. I didn't fall out of love with Wigan or rugby. It was just something inside me that wanted to go and do something else. And that's what then my agent and now my mate Andy Clark just said, "Oh, let's speak to some teams." And spoke to a few Australian teams, and New Zealand Warriors came in. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I just wanted to do something else. Really, it wasn't. There was no issue at Wigan. It was just, for me, I wanted to go and do something else for a bit.
When we talk about, big leaps, life transitions, major changes, that's a big one you've just done right there. it seems like you just decided, right, I'm going to do this. It's something a lot of people will think about, especially when they're stuck in a life they're frustrated by or don't particularly like. But it's something we will daydream about and never do. So how did how did you get your brain right? Like, actually, I'm just going to do it.
Well, I always had that. I'm just going playing rugby. For someone with a normal job, they're going to have to go somewhere. They're going to have to meet new friends. They're going to have to try and work out the job. I was just going playing rugby. It's not a real job, is it? It's I was already playing rugby. Just go and play rugby, but somewhere different. Like, yeah, all right. It's not. I knew I'd go into an environment and I'd meet 30 new blokes and I'd be friends with them, and it was easy. Really, it wasn't the actual moving there. Wasn't. Once I got there, you realise how far away you are from family. I was only 23 at the time, and or 24, I can't remember. And before I went, everyone was like, "You're only a day away from home. It's a day on a plane. You can always come back, and people can come to you." That's rubbish. It's not, because if someone wants to come to you, they've got to book 2 weeks off work. It's thousands of pounds. You're never gonna. You can't just nip home. But I loved living there, and I loved seeing a completely different culture, completely different way of living, different environment. And me and my girlfriend and my wife Charlotte, we loved living there. And then the opportunity to come back, Chris Radlinski phoned me. I just snapped the PCL ligament in my knee in 2015, and I was just down a little bit. I was like, I've never had an injury before that. And you start thinking, oh God, it might not be right, this. And Chris Radlinski pounced, give me a phone call. I don't think he actually pounced. He would just call me and said, look, would you consider coming back? The marquee signing rule was coming in, so financially it wasn't going to be much different. And my wife fell pregnant at the same time. So then the idea of being in Wigan was completely different again. I wasn't going to be going back to what I was doing before I went to New Zealand, if you know what I mean. I was a young lad living in my first house, going out all the time, just sort of free living. Then I was going to go back with my missus and my baby and going to buy a family home. So that was then like, oh, I'm going to go, that's something different. I'm going to go and do that.
Now, during that period in New Zealand, we chatted a fair bit. I think largely because I was in the office and my job at the BBC at the time on antisocial hours, which worked for you being at the other side of the world. A couple of things I recall from those chats we used to have was A, you used to say how much you missed your dog, and B, which I guess is the same thing. I kind of got the impression you were quite lonely. I don't know if that was just my perception of how you were at that time.
Yeah. I don't know if I was lonely as such or describe it as lonely, but yeah, when you're such a long way away and you're in a team environment, so you've naturally got a group of fellas that you're friendly with, and you can go on a night out with, you can do whatever you want, socializing with. But what you don't have is those mates where, touched on earlier, I've got the same friends from when I was 7-8 years old. I went to high school with them. Those same mates that I could just call up and say, oh, look, do you want to go and have a coffee? And basically sit there and talk rubbish, nothing significant, but just sit in Starbucks a full afternoon, looking out the window, talking rubbish. And that's something that I've definitely taken for granted. And now being in France, it's something that I don't take for granted. It's more that sort of security of people that any time of the day. You don't really think you need to speak to anyone, but just having that comfort of someone that you're really close with, you can come and sit down, talk rubbish, be really honest, talk about anything you want, and it's not forced at all. Whereas I think that's what I missed, and that's probably where, although I wouldn't describe myself as lonely, there was elements of that I certainly missed.
You know what? That's actually a really interesting point, and I'm a big believer. Actually, sometimes things happen or circumstances change in our lives, and it kind of really brings home to us the importance, and it's a big part of mental health when we talk about our mental fitness. Yeah. It brings home the importance of our circle. For me, I went through some, quite trauma a few years ago, and for me, it was like one of the positives when I look back, and I always try and take positives out of even like the worst kind of scenario. like it really defined to me. Like I knew when I come through that who my mates were and where they were and how much I needed them. And I guess you said that, that time of your career and your life, that brought home to you what made you tick as a person.
Yeah, I think it's just something that from being 16, 17, you leave school, and I got into the habit of, do you want to, when you're 17, you're driving, you first start driving, or do you want to come in the car? And you drive around, go McDonald's drive through, and you talk rubbish. And that then 10 years later turns into, do you want to go and sit in Starbucks and talk rubbish? And it don't mean anything. And it wasn't, I'd never say to a mate, if there's ever an issue, I'd say, oh, look, I need to speak to you about this. But it's not, it's just the general talking and being with people that you're really comfortable with, which is what was different for me. And even I know when I was in New Zealand, I felt like that. When I moved back to Wigan, we'd signed Morgan Escaray. Now Morgan came to Wigan speaking minimal English, and in an environment. I remember at the time thinking, you know what, I'm going to try my best to make sure that I try and give him a little bit of that, what I missed. And I never knew I'd be playing in France at the time, so my French was as bad as it could be. Bonjour was about all I could get then. But I'd call him and just go, or text him, do you want to go for a coffee? And when I would go for a coffee, and he'd say, he'd basically say, I don't know, I've got no Wi-Fi. I'd be like, all right, so I'd call up somebody, or can you come and fit his Wi-Fi? And something like that for him. He wasn't confident enough to go into the club and go, look, I've got no internet at home, can you do it? Blah, blah, blah. He just sat at home on his orange France phone on 3G, trying to, like it just not working. And I built a nice relationship with Morgan over that time. And I remember one day, he'd been at the club maybe 12 months, 18 months. And he said to me, oh, do you want to come for a beer? And I was like, oh, yeah. I thought that was strange for him to ask me. And his uncle was over from France. And I went to a pub with him and his uncle while they just spoke French for a full afternoon. And I just sat next to him. And it was almost like he thought, oh, Sam so I'll make the effort. It was the worst afternoon of my life. After this bell, I need to chat away in French. It was a shocker, but I built that relationship because I knew that was something that if I'd have had, I knew I'd have appreciated it at the time.
That's a really nice little story, that. And I guess that's why, we talk about the importance of giving and in mental health and the 5 ways of well-being, because that will have made you feel quite good as well. I guess, when you do stuff for other people, it makes you feel good, and that's all right.
Yeah, well, I knew that I'd made something a little bit easier for him, and I thought, it makes you feel good. It's like giving a gift. Everyone likes giving presents at Christmas. Everyone likes giving something to someone. I knew that I'd made it a little bit easier for him, or at times when he'd never say he didn't, he needed some chat or he needed a friend or whatever. I just felt like I tried to give him that as much as I possibly could. And in fairness, it went full circle when I was moving over to France before I'd signed here, or I'd signed but I hadn't moved yet. I was still at Wigan. He came and picked me up when I didn't know anywhere to go. I was staying in a hotel for a weekend, looking at houses. He said, I'll pick you up. I'll take you out to this really nice restaurant. Showed me a restaurant that his friend owned, and went in and made connections at a restaurant that I still go to today. So yeah, it's funny how it goes full circle.
Let's summarise that little period that you mentioned, because you did come back from the NRL to Wigan before you then left Wigan for the second time. That second coming at Wigan was, I'm guessing, pretty tough for you, because you almost went straight into surgery, and then you were plagued by injuries, and you were back as the big homecoming hero. And I got the impression at the time it was very hard for you. And I remember hearing at the time, through the rugby league gossip circles, that when you came back with your injuries and, they wanted rid of you from the NRL and you were done, you were done as a player. You were never going to be the same player, because your injury just you couldn't be the same player, and you wouldn't have got a game over there anymore. That's why you had to come back. Those were the kinds of things that were going around. So for you, that must have been really tough.
Yeah. And those sort of external noises of people being critical of me down to my injury, they didn't really affect me, because all those same things I was already asking myself. Now, as soon as I come back to Wigan, there was a big hoo-ha around me coming back, which was amazing. I really appreciated. But as soon as I got back, went to see a surgeon. He said, look, your knee's no good. You need to have a synthetic PCL put in. So I did, and it was my first ever injury. And then I was just in a rut of doing my rehab and thinking, I was questioning myself, like for my knee to, my biggest ability is agility. And for me to be looking at my knee thinking, I don't know if I can train my knee to do that again. Is that me done? So all these things that people were saying and questioning, I was questioning myself. And there's no harsher critic than myself. And I know that I was questioning myself at times, but I took some confidence in looking around at other people that had come back from injuries the same and much worse. And it was only after that period that I sort of gained a true respect for people that come back from injury. And when you're 21, 22, you think, I'll play forever. I'll be that one that never has an injury. And it happens to all of us, or the vast majority of rugby players take it at some point. And one of my good mates, Don Manfredi, who's finishing at the end of this year, he's had more knee operations than I could even count, and he's bounced through it every single time. I know I couldn't do what Dom's done. It's so mentally draining and so emotionally draining when you're trying to come back from an injury and constant question every single day, thinking, I don't know if I can do that. And then you wake up one morning and every time you take a step in rehab, it's funny, I'm watching it with one of our players now, Archie Romano. He's coming back from an ACL. He trained on the field for the first time the other day. And he went in the changing rooms after and he could have cartwheeled around the room. You could tell just from being on the field, didn't run with us, didn't do anything, just doing mobility with a physio on the grass. And it lifts you. And every time you get one of those, you think, you know what? I can't believe I was ever questioning myself. But then when you've done that for a month, you're thinking, I can't run. I'll never do it again. And it's a cycle you're in, and it is so mentally and emotionally draining. But I eventually came through it. But it was an underwhelming return to Wigan when as soon as I came back, I was injured and I had to deal with all of
that. On one of our earlier episodes of this series, Anthony Mullally came on, who admitted he had a bit of a realization and self-awakening when he won the 17 grand final at Leeds, and then suddenly he realized that he didn't have it in him to do it again, because A, he'd achieved his dream, but B, he'd experienced how hard it was to get there, and he couldn't actually mentally get himself into that zone to go and do it again. So he decided that if I'm going to carry on playing rugby, I need to do it for another reason, and that was for experiences. So he wanted to use it as a tool to travel. So, which is why I went to Toronto, which didn't end well. And then now he's playing semi-pro part-time in Carcassonne in the south of France. You made the move to France, but still at an elite level. Was there any kind of shift in your ambition or drive in your mindset at the time?
Absolutely not, no. For me, my drive and hunger to win something is as high, if not higher, than it's ever been before.
Wow. For
a couple of reasons, really. Like when you're at Wigan, you're bred into a culture of you're expected to succeed, you're expected to be successful every single year. You look at, you go in the gym at Wigan, and Wigan have got unbelievable facilities, and they're very good at reminding you of the history of the club. And there'll be pictures up of Hilary Hanley, Sean O'Loughlin, Sean Edwards, all these great people around you, and you feel that way, and that's the pressure then, and that's the expectation that and that's what you feel. Now, I'm at another club now where it's a very, very young. My heritage number at Wigan is 1006. At Catalans Dragons is 132. That's the difference in these clubs. And now I think I just want to be part of the first Catalan team to win a title, and the city of Perpignan, the people, everyone involved in the club, they're desperate for that, and I fully buy into that. It's a club that I love, an area that I love, and I want to be part of a team that wins the first ever grand final. And I now I'm 32. I know that I've not got 10 years left to win stuff. I was lucky in my second Super League year, I won the grand final, and I was like, oh, how easy is this? Just win trophies all the time. And I've realised over the years it's not. I've been lucky and picked up trophies, but they don't come as often as you'd like, never. And so now I know my seasons are limited, and I'm at a club that are really ambitious and desperate to win. So yeah, my drive and my reasons for coming here are purely to win, and certainly not for experiences. They're a really nice byproduct and something that I'll probably dwell on when I retire.
So the crux of this podcast series is transition, and how we approach, I guess, logistically, but mentally, emotionally, major change in our lives, which to professional sportsmen is retirement. And you've already said, you maybe not got long left. At the start of next year, you'll be 33 at the start of next year. So yeah. Where are you with that process, the end of career mindset?
Well, I'm ready for it whenever it may come. A few years ago, I realised that I do need to start thinking, and I do need to get myself in the right position. I've been playing long enough now that I've seen a lot of people retire and not be ready for it. Whether that's financially or just a lot of it is, I listened to your podcast with Leon, and him knowing that he didn't really have his plan, his backup plans, and I know a lot of players like that. So a few years ago, I got to really thinking. Me and a friend of mine, who's one of my friends from 7 years old, but I met at Wigan St Pat's, Reese. We started a plumbing firm in England. I can't fix a leaking radiator. I can't do anything. But he's a plumber, and I said, look, I can finance it and learn about business, and I did some business courses, and that was what I thought. Going forward, we had an idea of how we wanted to grow the business, and by the time I retire, we'd have X amount of employees, and that'd get us X amount a month, and I've actually been bought out of that now. I've not even retired, and that's been and gone. Yeah. So that was my first sort of taste of outside of rugby life, which I've been lucky that I've been able to do that while I've been playing. But that's sort of gone, and I had to have a real think about what I want to do. I'm lucky that financially I've invested in properties which have put me in a decent position when I do retire. Something I'm pretty passionate about is staying in the game in some capacity. No, I'm not for coaching. I don't think coaching's for me. A lot of people just presume.
Why not?
I just, do you know what it is? I see coaches and how hard they work and how frustrated they get, and I think I don't want that.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, and people always presume that you're going to, if you're a spine player, you're going to do it. It's never even sort of been something I've thought of. I don't know. I love rugby, but I'm not I think you have to be a rugby nerd to be a coach. Do you know, you have to watch every game and analyze every game. And I've got good friends who they can dissect a game unbelievable. Thomas Luluai is far and away. Thomas Luluai could be coach of the year next year if he got a team. I truly believe that. He's just smart. He watches games, and you'll talk about a game or you'll talk about a defence you're playing against, and I'll know my sort of markers of, look, I know if I'm playing against Wakefield, if Reece Lynn turns in, I know what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. But Tommy will know from the bloke in the middle of the field to the bloke on the wing, and he'll dissect everything. And that's just not really. I listened to a podcast with Sean Long a few months back now, and he said, when I was playing, I knew like I wanted to coach. Like while I was playing, I felt like I wanted to coach a team already. And that's something I've never thought of. I've never thought I want to coach a team, but I like helping kids. And there's some young kids now at Catalan that I try and sort of do a few extras with and tip up and where I can. I get more from that than I would coaching a team. So coaching's not for me, but along those lines, my agent and now my friend Andy Clark, he's got a business. He's been a very successful agent for a long time with outside sport, and I spoke to him recently about it 12 months ago and said, it's something, the agency side is something I could develop into later in time, but for now I want to get hold of some young kids, because I feel like I've got good experience of, not being the best player coming through, as we discussed. Then I've moved to the other side of the world, come back. I've been here. I'm pretty well rounded in terms of deals and moving and things like that. And I know that I was lucky to have good people around me, good family around me, good friends around me, good advice from clubs, good advice. Sean Wayne had a massive impact in everything I've done. And I know that not all young kids have got that same luxury. So along with Andy and his agency company, I want to get involved with just sort of mentoring young kids, really. And that can be anything from 15 years old up until, and whenever they wanted me. I think I can add some value there. That's what I'm passionate about, and that alongside the media stuff. Sky Sports have been really good to me over the years, and they've given me, plenty of opportunities to learn about media, be involved on game days. I've had a couple of little things on the old boots and all, and stuff like that. So for me, that's something that I'd love to get involved with. And I think through those two, through media and sort of agenting, mentoring, I think I'd like to stay in the game in that capacity. But again, I've got the wheels in motion for these things, and hope they'll be ready whenever I do retire. But I'm hoping it's a few years down the line before I am.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of interesting points there. You have clearly, just going on the length that you just gave me that in that answer, you've thought about it a lot. You've thought about it a lot,
Yeah.
And you might still play another 3 years. I don't know if you're going to let the legend go at the top of your game or just flog it out until you have to be scraped off the turf.
Yeah.
I get the impression you want to play for as long as possible, right?
Yeah, I do. I still love playing. I was chatting to some of the boys the other day, and it was one of the young kids. He's 19, and I was like, my first pre-season was 2008, and he was like, 2008, or he was, can't remember how old then. I was like, yeah, and he's like, and you still like doing it? I said, I love playing. I hate training. I don't like training. I feel like it's a waste now. There's no point in me going in the gym. I've been doing it for 15 years. I still look like this. But yeah, I still love playing, and I think I can't see that ever subsiding. But as well, I don't want to be that fella that they're like, is he still playing somewhere? I don't want to be that guy. So I'm not sure when I'll retire. But it's funny at the moment because Joel's 2 years older than me, and he's looking at retiring soon. It's different, he's a step ahead of me, and it's good that we can sort of bounce ideas off each other, what we'll be doing, and we'll be doing very different things in life after rugby, but just being able to chat about it and get into the realities of it, of how it is. And I've got friends that have finished playing rugby and gone on, been really successful, and I've got friends that have not done anything and they've ended up on a building site 6 months after retiring. So there's a broad spectrum, and I think there's an onus on clubs, which I think there should be more education for young kids on money management as you're coming through into the first grade, and as you're getting paid what we'd call proper money. I think there's too many kids in flash cars sleeping in the single bed in the mum's spare room. And when you get to retiring, I think that costs you.
I mean, I completely get what you said about knowing that you don't want to be a coach. It just triggered when you were saying that. When Kevin Sinfield retired 2015, he drove over to Manchester a couple of weeks after that to catch up, and we went for a coffee, and I said, what are you going to do next? And he said pretty much the same thing. He said, I don't want to coach. He said, Gary Hetherington has asked me, do I want to be assistant to Brian McDermott? And I've said to him, Gary, I'm not sure you want that. I'm pretty sure Brian doesn't want that. And I certainly don't want that. But it was kind of like, you want to keep these guys involved in the club. But Kevin's like, I don't really want to do that. Then he went away to work with the RFL in England. And he's leaving Leeds now, but he's ended up, his heart made him go back. But he never wanted to do the coaching side. So that was very interesting, that answer. That reminded me of that conversation, that coffee I had with Kevin. He said pretty much exactly the same thing. In terms of your options, like saying what you're going to do, it just struck me that you've kind of dragged your family, or certainly your wife, all over the world, like the other side of the world, and then now in another country in France. And I get the impression that you're probably going to retire in France.
I would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really settled. You know, my kids are in school. I've got my 2 boys are in school. My daughter will be starting next year. I've got another baby boy due a week today. So, you know, my kids are fully engrossed in French life. They don't remember England. They don't remember anything of it. Just my eldest son's 5, so he was 2 when we moved here. The only thing he remembers is that we had a couple of pigs in our garden in Wigan, pet pigs, worked for slaughter, and that's all he remembers. When you say, "Oh, do you remember living in England?" He just says, "Oh, we had pigs," and that's it. You know, so they have no memory, they have no connection. We have a lot of family fly out, you know, COVID permitting, on holiday, so we see family, and that's just normal for my kids. You know, I've got a few years playing in me yet, I think, in France, and when I retire, my wife loves it. So we'd have to try and convince our kids to move back to Wigan or move back to England, and that'd be as big of a move for them as it was for us coming out here originally. So as it stands, you know, I'd like to, if I can, stay in France. You know, I could travel back for work if needed, but you know, my wife's been so supportive of everything that I've done throughout my career, not only day to day. And you know, I can come home from training and I've got a bad ankle. I'll be on the couch with my foot up. The kids will be running around and she'll be making tea, cleaning, and she supports me every day like that. I'm really, really lucky. But she also supports me in the fact that when I in New Zealand said, "Look, we're going back to Wigan," she didn't like it, but she's like, "Yeah, you know, I'm happy to sort of go along with on the ride." And then again, coming out to France, she was a little bit dubious, but I said, "Look, it's a great opportunity." She came and she loves it. And I've always given her the promise that when I do retire, if there's something that she wants to do, then I'm happy to do it. She'd quite like to own a little Airbnb somewhere, or a little wedding venue, maybe up in the north of France somewhere, is something that she'd like to do. So whatever that is, you know, after when I retire, I'll be the stay-at-home dad trying to do a bit of part-time work somewhere, and hopefully she'll have a passion that she wants to throw herself into, and I'll have to repay the last 15 years by backing her whatever she wants to do.
So she might be running a B&B or something and have you up at 5-6 in the morning in the kitchen doing the guest fry-ups, right?
If it means I can stay in France, I'll be up. I'll be cooking. I'll do the best full English you've ever seen.
A final point then. It's been a brilliant chat. I really appreciate the time we've chatted. What's your? I always ask our guests at the end, you know, what's their outlook on life, how they view life now, you know, what they would say to a younger you about how to approach life.
I think it's just take opportunity. If you see an opportunity, just go for it. I think, you know, a lot of people are hesitant to become uncomfortable because, you know, an opportunity arises that isn't the easy option. I think you've just got to take those. You've got to think, you know what, why not? And it's a mentality I've tried to have, and at times I've not always followed it, and I've kicked myself for it. But you know, whether it be in business, in rugby, in life, you know, in whatever it'd be, you know, if an opportunity arises, just go for it. Just go and take it. You know, the best things come from putting yourself in uncomfortable positions and uncomfortable situations, and you know, going through some adversity. It may be tough at the time, but I think you always, at the end, you get the reward. So yeah, for me, it's opportunity. If it's there, go and take it.
I couldn't agree with that more. That last point. Sam Tomkins, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time. It's been really good chatting to you. Take good care. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.